Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our wonderful viewers who are joining us today. We are streaming this live event globally across multiple platforms, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So welcome for all those people joining us and those people who are watching the recording afterwards. Please do start off by sharing where you are dialing into from today in the comments. We love to hear the breadth of viewers right the way across the world, lots of different types of organisations, to talk about a topic that is so important right now and leading into the rest of 2024. Wellbeing and human sustainability. I'm really excited. This topic is so important, and to be having a conversation here today with both Kirsten from Camwell and Chris from Wellbeing at Work, two of my fabulous friends I've known for a long time, and we've built our businesses that all kind of work in and around and overlap around this wellbeing agenda, and really excited to be having a fantastic conversation and for everyone to join in with that conversation today. Hello Ashok, thank you for starting off the comments and telling us that you're dialing in from Dubai. Please let us know, where are you dialing in from today? And I'll hand over to Kirsten first to say hello.
Hi everyone, it's so great to be with you this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are. And Alex, Chris, I'm so glad we finally got our acts together to do this very, very exciting and important conversation today. And actually, it's really got me reflecting a lot on just what a privilege it has been to be part of the corporate wellbeing industry as we know it today. From its sort of relative infancy 10 years ago when I founded Camwell to now, where things have just changed so much, and we're now really actively driving, campaigning, shaping this really important and critical area of work. And you know, we've all had our frustrations, I'm sure, but it's also been really rewarding to, I guess, see and witness the evolution and to play a role in leading this transformation. So really looking forward to having this conversation. And human sustainability is something that we're extremely passionate about.
Yeah, and it's such a big topic, isn't it? Which is why I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I know we've only got 45 minutes, so let's hand over to Chris as well to say hello. It's lovely to see you.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here, and thanks for inviting me. So it looks like there's quite a few people on holiday in the chat, which is great to see where they're tuning in from. Really excited about the conversation we're going to have. Great to see so many people joining, and yeah, it's exciting because we've all been in this world for over a decade. So yeah, hopefully we can pass on a few nuggets of insight for the audience.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, just for everyone listening in, you know, myself and Kirsten and Chris, we're friends of old, and we've been chatting about our businesses and about trending topics around this area of wellbeing for so many years now. And we keep saying, oh, we should share some of this more broadly with our audiences. So today is the first day we're actually opening up our conversation. So you get a chance to listen in and be part of some of our debate, our challenge, our questioning around a really key topic for wellbeing and human sustainability. So I'll kick us off by just giving us an outline and set some questions, and then we can just open that to everybody and have a really good conversation. So we've been talking about human sustainability. What does that even mean? So we'll explore that a bit. What does sustainability mean separate from human sustainability? Is this a topic people are hearing in organizations right now? And why are we talking about that in relation to well-being? Well, well-being's been on quite a journey across lots of different places in the world. It's become to mean different things to different organizations. And through various different challenges that we've all faced across the world in the last 5 to 10 years, actually, it's become increasingly important for people to recognize that actually being part of an organization, being in a role, actually significantly impacts our well-being. It's not something that we just focus on personally, but it's something that organizations can wholeheartedly support, not just for social and morally conscious reasons, but also for productivity and performance reasons too. And so, yeah, today we really wanted to focus in on human sustainability because we've all been working in wellbeing. We've been working with organisations that, you know, have a ream of benefits to support people. And we've been helping organisations set strategies for wellbeing, to understand where their focus should lie, short-term, long-term, sometimes more immediate response opportunities. But Wellbeing has taken on quite a bit of a change, I think, in the last year. And this is something I've been talking about with Kirsten and Chris, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that, as well as why we're talking about human sustainability. What does it really mean? And why is that so important for wellbeing now? So perhaps if I come to you, Chris, first. So where are we at with wellbeing right now? Obviously, you're holding these events right the way across the world, all focused on wellbeing. What's the conversation? What's happening on the agenda for wellbeing at the moment?
Well, I think, like you say, Alex, during the COVID years, there was explosion of focus towards wellbeing, and then the sort of post-COVID drop off. And I guess where organisations are now. I don't think it's come further down the agenda. I think it's more they're looking at, what's working. There was a lot of things rushed through during COVID, understandably, and trying to now really evaluate and take that more medium to longer term view. I call it the Warren Buffett approach to wellbeing. So let's not try and get quick wins. There are short term gains to have, but if you take a more comprehensive view towards well-being and think more medium to longer term, like Warren Buffett, he's done all right. So just having that more sustainable approach, which I think feeds into that human sustainability as well.
Yeah, that longer term focus is definitely coming top of the agenda for lots of clients I'm talking to at the moment. And there is that question around what's really working, what's actually making a difference, and where is our investment best spent. A lot of organisations I know have been challenged in the last year to 18 months and are really taking a real look at where they're spending. And if they're making restructures, reorganisations, and that includes any kind of redundancies or cuts, they're also looking at everywhere that they're spending money to ensure that they're getting best value for that. And I've seen a range of things being lifted away from a wellbeing provision. I don't know, have you seen the same, Kirsten? What's going on in your client groups?
Yeah, we've absolutely seen the same. I mean, on the one hand, you've still got organisations that recognise the value and still reaping the rewards and the benefits. But I think there's just been so much challenge out there, so much economic pressure, so many concerns and fears around recession, cost cutting, and ultimately many organisations have had to cut a lot of their budgets, and often that means reducing manpower, resources, and so on. So we've definitely seen a lot of that. I think over the last 12 months or so, it feels like things are starting to stagnate as well. Mm-hmm. And I think there's just, again, we did so much during the pandemic to support people that I think there's a bit of wellbeing fatigue happening too.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, there's just a lot. So it's really now thinking about it. There's never been a greater time now than to kind of just take stock of where you are, do some really great internal listening, and actually really evaluate what that long-term strategy is and how human sustainability can fit into that. Because I very much see wellbeing sitting at the intersection of I very much see human sustainability sitting at the intersection of well-being, equity, purpose, and belonging. So it's such a brilliant place to start. But I think we now need to kind of help educate people about what it actually means and what businesses can do to start advancing their agendas in that space.
Yeah, because sustainability, it means so much to so many different organisations, and there's whole functions obviously in organisations that focus on sustainability. But then if you join one of those organisations and the sustainability function focuses on one aspect of that, such as, for example, ESG reports and targets that go to shareholders and go to the board, but don't actually touch the people kind of strategy or the people employee life cycle at all, it can feel a little bit disjointed in the sense that actually people aren't listening. So I love when you said that about actually now's the time to really listen to people and what are they thinking about and what are they really feeling. So we've had a lot of clients who are doing kind of focus groups and a bit of analysis around their employee value proposition, their EVP, to really understand what's important to people now. Because that kind of once a year people survey also feels fairly static as well in terms of understanding what's important to people. And it's very much coming through in new generations into the workforce that sustainability is rising on that agenda in terms of impact on how people feel about their organizations, how they feel about their colleagues, how they feel about work. And traditionally, there's not been many opportunities for people to actually bring that conversation into their working environment. It's been very much focused in one department or one function. And we really need to think about if we're not helping people understand how their role, their team, their function, their organization is contributing to overall global sustainability and human sustainability beyond their organization, we're missing something, aren't we? We're missing a trick in my mind. It's like, why wouldn't we talk about that? But it does feel like a new topic.
Yeah, I think there's also the the macro day to day. If you are reducing headcount, human sustainability becomes ever more difficult, and you're trying to do more with less. We're all looking for, especially the new UK government, we're looking for higher productivity, higher growth. We're looking to grow ourselves out of this current situation. If we're doing more with less, we're going to see, and what we are seeing is a bigger burnout numbers. We've got to make sure that job roles are clear and not over exerting people to a point of burnout, because we won't have any human sustainability in an organisation if that continues.
And it's back to the basics, isn't it? It's almost like just, when I think about human sustainability, when I actually talk about it, it is fundamentally going back to those basics of is this role possible to do? Can I perform this role with increased responsibility, with increased stretch and exposure and reach, with a smaller team on a global level? It's all those small kind of stretches that have traditionally people have talked about as being almost the opportunity to grow in role and to have great learning and development opportunities, which is fine if it's within your sphere of stretch. But actually, if it's beyond that, then we lead into a space where people don't feel that actually they have that job kind of autonomy, which we know is a clear indicator and a major factor in stress and burnout situations. So when does it switch from being a nice stretch and a learning and development opportunity to go from a single role to a global role, or to manage several teams rather than just one team? But actually not having the fundamentals in place to support that stretch. I guess that's the piece I'm questioning around human sustainability. Kirsten, you've been looking at this as well. Where would you say it's kind of getting into those nuts and bolts? What are the basics of human sustainability?
I think we're very accustomed now to hearing the word sustainability in an environmental context.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously we're now talking about it from a human perspective. And that to some extent is requires a slightly different mindset shift. I don't know how many of you, or perhaps you can put in the chat if any of you are already working on your human sustainability agenda, or if it's something that's completely new to you. But I guess for those whom it is new to, it's probably worth just unpacking what it actually means. So again, Chris and Alex, feel free to chip in. But for me, it's very much about how do we create and how do we maintain a world where humans and nature can happily coexist, and as part of that, how do we make sure that the social, economic and environmental resources that are needed to support our people now and also in the future are both available and also equitable. And I think that does require, kind of really does evolve in terms of where we've come from, thinking about sustainability from an environmental perspective, and it does require a real mindset shift in organizations. We typically think organizations have typically acted in a very kind of extractive, transactional mindset, where historically it's all been about how much value can we extract from our people. And instead about thinking that the value that we can take from people, it's now about thinking about, well, what is the value that we can offer people from working here? You mentioned better employability, more skills. It's all better at health and well-being outcomes. So it really is looking at things from a very different lens. And I guess, as we are aware that the Earth is very delicate. It's a very intricate system. It's not an endless reservoir of resources. Mm-hmm. But equally, we've got to look after our planet because that's going to equal a better future. Similarly, You know, we don't as human beings have finite resources. And if we don't start looking after ourselves and managing the pace that we're working at, we're going to burn out and get ill.
Yeah, I see that a lot, and people are burning out and getting ill, right? I mean, quite significantly, and you know, right the way across the world in lots of different types of roles. So we are seeing that pull to do more is not something that people are rejecting. They're just working even harder and trying to go even faster and do even more, and it's not working for them. And human sustainability is, as I said, is a topic I think is being raised more, but it does challenge the way organizations look at their employee life cycle, their engagement, their productivity. You know, traditional kind of traditional dashboards of organizational performance are not focused in on human sustainability. So does it change everything from the top? Is this something that needs to come from our executive teams that are leading the vision and strategy? And if so, how do we ignite that interest in senior leaders to follow and explore what that lens could do for their organization? I love listening to the way you talk about it, because obviously we use completely different words. So I'm always sitting there thinking, oh God, I hadn't thought about it that way. And I love it when I listen to both of you talking about these different topics, because I'm thinking about it from a different perspective of how can everybody who's in an organization feel that their contribution to that organization is a good contribution to the world, and how much does that affect their mental health and therefore their well-being if they don't feel their organization is doing enough, or they don't even know what their organization is doing, if it's far separated. And I feel like the options for people are very, very low. They could either join some level of employee resource group in an organization that has passion and kind of influence and investment into some conversations, or personally be an activist outside of work. But it doesn't feel like there's an option for everyone every day. And that's where I think there's an opportunity here for wellbeing teams, or for people exactly in that space around DE&I, wellbeing, inclusion, that sit in the people strategy in interestingly different roles. I think we're seeing some new titles coming through this year. Is what can they do to really think about the whole of the employee life cycle, the whole of the people strategy, and think about it with that human sustainability lens, so that people feel it when they come into an organization. They're attracted because the organization is sharing what they're doing to support humans and the planet. And so they feel good about joining the organization. They're inducted into how they can support that. They can, know on a regular basis how their role contributes to those organizational aims. And I think that's going to become more and more important as new generations come into this organizational field of work, where they've been through school and education, learning about how to save the world, and then entering organizations where that's just reserved for the ESG department or the CSR department, and stuck in a targets report for the board. Where does it come into play on a daily basis for people? And that really worries me, actually, because I think we need to pick up the pace with that really quickly. But I think wellbeing is an angle that we can do that, and find that next hook, that next pull that brings and evolves wellbeing into a different conversation. Chris, I know you have lots of global events where people are talking about wellbeing. Are you hearing conversations about human sustainability needing to be at the forefront of wellbeing in different places, or is that a common thing, or is it kind of quite sporadic at the moment?
I think it's mixed depending on the region. I just wanted to pick up on what Steve said in the chat around sustainable, high-performing teams, and you mentioned, Alex, around engaging the executive level. I think that's the sort of language we need to be using to engage the executive level to get them engaged in this, because it is important that they're engaged in both well-being, human sustainability, and the wider world of sustainability. And we all want high-performing teams as leaders. That's such a that's the bedrock of an organisation, and at the moment we're not getting that in many organisations. And I think human sustainability plays a huge role in ensuring we have high performing teams. So if we can engage the executive level with the right language around performance, and then it starts to feed throughout the organisation, then I think we start to see the human sustainability piece really grow within an organisation. Because as you say, lots of people coming into jobs now, younger people are looking for this. That's what has been talked about for all of their lives, so that they want to come into an organisation that has that at the heart of their strategy, for sure.
Do you think that's going to be possible though, with the stress that organisations are under right now? Because I feel like organisations are quite tight. Like there's not a lot of space to move. There's real competition for resource internally, even in the largest of organisations, where there used to be reams of people available to move around on different projects, and now that's not possible anymore. It feels very tight. Do you think there's the ability to find the space to create that conversation at an exec level?
Well, I would argue that if you're not having these conversations at an exec level, you shouldn't be there, because it's that important. If you want that high performance, I think this is critical. And ultimately, CEOs, boards are judged by their performance and their results. And so if their organisation is not performing to the best it can in a healthy way, then they're not going to be in their roles for too much longer.
Personally, I think the only way to cut, you're absolutely right, there is finite resource, finite time, finite everything, finite money, etc. I think really the only way to cut through some of this is for organisations to be prepared to think more radically about what can be changed at both a systemic and operations level. And to think about how we fix the narrative that when things get tough, it's the person that needs fixing rather than the system itself. And I know that maybe leads on to more difficult conversations internally around, how do we redesign work? How do we redesign our workflows to better put our people at the kind of the center of our organization? But I think unless organizations are intentional and willing to kind of step out of the day-to-day, I don't think this is going to get the traction that it needs.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Kirsten, and it's really interesting because Ant's just mentioned there as well what part of that is the responsibility of the individual, and I think organisations often do that, so they kind of spin back to that individual responsibility piece, and is that even possible for people within a system that maybe isn't supportive? And changing systems is so much harder, isn't it, particularly at enterprise-wide level, and being able to bring that conversation to the right people is really very hard. And it's almost like it's only when all the numbers start going in the wrong directions around sickness and turnover and serious impact on the bottom line to people not experiencing a great sustainable working environment, is when people start to take notice. And it's almost like it's a shame it has to get that far. Does it really have to get that far that we can't catch it before people are really in a bad way? Because from what I know, a lot of people who burn out don't ever really come back into the same roles. So actually what we're doing is we're losing chunks of the workforce through that approach, rather than proactively looking ahead to what can create sustainable performance. And I love what Steve said about that, sustainable high performing teams. I used to think about and use the term well performance in terms of making sure that exactly that performance is important, but it has to go hand in hand with well-being, because otherwise it's just not going to be sustainable. It's going to be, one high performing individual after the other. So how can we actually create teams that support each other, so that as people's energy or life challenges ebb and flow, the team steps in to support that sustainable kind of work performance overall? Because in any given time, there's always going to be one person in a team that isn't having a great time and is struggling with something, at least. I mean, you think about all the people we know, loads of people are dealing with big challenges outside of work and inside of work. So how can we create that sustainable team performance rather than trying to get individuals to be more and more resilient? That worries me. The whole resilience movement feels like it's gone quite far in that individual focus. I don't know, Kirsten, if you see that very much, but I get a lot of that kind of clients talking about developing individual resilience, and I'm trying to expand that to say, well, let's think about the team more, the organisation more on a systemic level.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be addressed at a systems level, and it comes back, CAMA would stand for three things. Firstly, addressing the root cause. poor wellbeing and suboptimal culture. And it's seldom that the wellbeing programme is not good enough. It's usually more system, operational, cultural issues. It's got to be looked at more broadly, really, and taking, as we've said, taking that time to actually just take stock of where you're at as an organisation, what's important, and really looking for what those root causes are that's affecting people's resilience. So I think we really address we can all run programs to support team resilience or individual resilience or organisational resilience. But again, if the problems are actually rooted in other areas, I'd argue that you need to understand what those are first.
And it really expands like the existing focus in the way that we've looked at wellbeing strategy before, doesn't it? To really almost apply the same rules and the same process that we've taken to wellbeing to look at that sustainability. So just kind of it broadens that topic out, and it makes some of the wellbeing interventions seem a little bit pitiful, really, now when we kind of look back on 5-6 years, and I'm thinking about all these lovely benefits that people were really excited about, thinking, gosh, that's not even going to touch the surface to some of the things that are going on now, because the pace of change, the way the world is evolving, and the challenges we're facing on such a regular basis that affect organisations and therefore all the people in them, really does stretch our ability to constantly evolve how we look at something. So that kind of strategic focus, as Jonathan said, needs to be at all of those levels, doesn't it? That individual, team and organisational level, so that we're really looking at it at a systemic level. And as you say, like that's only really possible at senior levels in an organisation, because otherwise you don't have that big picture view.
I think technology is going to play a big part in helping humans sustainability as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we can take out of people's days over the next couple of years, and a lot of the burnout challenges are caused by that longer and longer hours. Actually, there's the dawn of AI over the next year or two is going to really help that. And I think we should, whilst there are many challenges with AI and have been well documented, and I'm sure there'll be further, there's a huge opportunity to really embrace it as well within an organisation, and reduce that the menial tasks that take up so much of our time.
Yeah, and it worries me almost that it's the thinking that takes up most of the time. There's so much thinking that's involved and required for some of the work that's going on now, because the world is complex. Things need to be contextualized. Things need to be really understood and listened to at a granular level, that it's really hard to almost know how to instruct ChatGPT to do something, because you've got to do the thinking into that as well, haven't you? So it's not in absence of that. It's about how do we learn to do that better in an easier way? And I look at my kids who are on their devices like this, and their brains are whirring in the right direction with the way technology is thinking. And I sit there sometimes and I think I struggle to think that way of how do I program ChatGPT, but my kids can do it very easily. And I'm wondering whether it's just this new generations perhaps that are evolving different ways of using technology that's actually going to support this shift away from this huge capacity issue that we feel that's causing burnout.
There's a great comment in the chat from Selena around the importance of workplace culture, and I couldn't agree more with you. Start with the culture, and then you're going to be able to get the best out of your people, absolutely. And sometimes that means looking at some of the hard stuff, and sometimes that's looking at the kind of the quick wins, but definitely the organisations that we see that are really excelling are the ones that are really prioritising the culture, not the kind of superficial tokenism type elements of wellbeing.
Do you think that maybe, so it's just kind of occurring to me, because there was a big push, certainly at the beginning of this year and the end of last year, around skills-based organisations, and we were talking about that a lot at Bailey and French as well, and it feels like almost that's been such a big focus for people that perhaps we've missed something around culture and humanness and sustainability. That's like we're missing a lens because we've gone so far into skills and making sure that everyone's got the right skills to be able to train and develop and do the job properly. And people want skills development so that they stay and we retain them. But does that actually, have we gone too far? Is that causing us a problem?
I think we have kind of skipped over the human-centered conversation. Was it like back in 2017 or something, when it was like the ISO 27500, don't quote me on that, around creating human-centered organisations? Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
There was that whole movement to how do we get organisations to take a more human-centered approach, and I definitely feel like we skipped over that somewhere along the lines. And obviously, not long after that, we were, into kind of battle mode. But it is an interesting one.
Yeah.
For sure.
I just want to pick up on what Sophie said in the chat as well, because I completely agree with this. And going back to what I said at the beginning, we live in a world of you've got to get short-term results, and you see this with quarter by quarter. We can't have 2 bad quarters. Let's get rid of loads of people and make our numbers look better. And if you look at some of the most successful companies, their shareholder value goes up over the long term. Those who really focus medium to longer term are getting the better results. These short-term fixes just cause so much anxiety within an organization through our people, and actually over a given period, it doesn't actually deliver better results. So having that more medium to longer term thinking is what we need at board level.
And how diverse are our shareholder groups? So I have to ask that question in terms of really understanding the nature of the roles that are being done in those organisations. I'm hearing more back to the floor kind of conversations now for leaders to really take time to understand the different parts of their organisation and the roles that people are actually playing in doing work when they're setting strategy. And I worry that some of that isn't going back to shareholders at all, and that they're too far removed sometimes. And so that shareholder education is really hard to influence, isn't it? Depending on where you are in the organisation. But certainly it can be influenced, obviously, and we can ask those questions and people can bring it. And they do, people are being much more vocal and open with their thoughts and suggestions and challenges to senior teams than ever before. I'm speaking to people at exec level who are saying, you wouldn't believe the emails I get from people telling me about how we're running the organization, that they never would have got 20 years ago. So hopefully there is this open culture where people are being more transparent about what they ask and they're expecting as part of their EVP. But how do we create that culture where people can continue to do that, and it's not just 1 or 2 people, but actually everyone has the chance to influence and to ask of the people who are running the organisation?
And braver boards as well. You say about shareholder education, we need those braver leaders who are going to talk about their medium to longer term strategy instead of we're going to change everything within 1 quarter, because that's that short termism is just not working. So thinking more medium to longer term, you will have a few bumps in the road, but if you're here as shareholders for the longer term, you will see, and there's great companies that you could list who have done this, but thinking that longer term approach and being brave as a leader, because 2 bad quarters can lose you the job, but actually if you take a more medium to longer term view, the shareholder value will be far higher.
And what's the impact when you are brave? What is the opportunity for career development as being part of one of those people that does challenge and speak up and tries to move the organisation and steer it forwards? I see a lot of leaders at the moment who are quite isolated, actually, working very hard on a lot of stuff, but in one direction. and actually there's less unity and collaboration, connectivity at leadership levels than ever there was before, driven, I think, by the fact that a lot of people are working more remotely now. So they're not getting together in the big leadership conferences that they were. And I'm seeing more people do that this year, but I think there's a real need for it, that feeling that we're actually all in this together. Being in one room does create that feeling. Despite being expensive, I think it's actually the investment that's needed to get people together talking and having that human connection that you just can't get otherwise, that's not driven by a meeting agenda, but actually by just sitting down and having a chat with somebody and really starting to notice that, yes, this theme that I'm seeing in the organisation, actually there's plenty of other people in the room that are sensing that and feeling it too. And that creates that confidence, doesn't it? And that bravery. It certainly does when I talk to you two about, different things that we're doing in my organisation. And I think, gosh, yes, well, if Kirsten and Chris agree with me, then I'm going to go ahead and do it. And it's like, you get that bravery in numbers, don't you? You feel like you're invincible because people believe in you and they agree. And I think maybe it's that we need to create more unity, more connection in leadership groups to be braver.
I think as we've discussed, it's got to be a multi-stakeholder responsibility, but absolutely we obviously need to do a lot more work at that board shareholder level. I think just to raise another couple of things in terms of why it's so challenging to embed and advance these agendas. I think there's definitely has been a kind of a cost perception that implementing sustainability-led practices is very expensive. And ultimately that's perhaps led to companies wanting to make those changes that potentially impact their bottom line in the short term. Yeah. And I think also just the fact that it is complex. I mean, no one on here has said that they're advancing their agenda or they've been working on a human sustainability agenda. It's a very multifaceted topic, very complex. It encompasses, the kind of ESG elements, the economic elements, and I think sometimes when organisations can fully struggle to grasp the exact scope of what it is and what it can mean for their organisations, and there's that lack of understanding, I think that can often lead to inaction. And I don't think companies have, I don't think we can fault organisations for not acting yet, because I think there's a big education and awareness that needs to happen. But I think it is perhaps one of the reasons why things like CSR activities, whilst they have evolved over a number of years, have still continued to be kind of separate initiatives to kind of core business strategy. Mm-hmm. So it is just worth thinking about, as we're going forwards and companies are, want to take this kind of idea of human sustainability forward, that, how can we educate ourselves? What does that mean for our business? What does radical look like in terms of the changes we might make? But also that kind of awareness that it is complicated.
Yeah, and I thank you. Isabel's been sharing the QR code for we've got a few different toolkits and articles available for all our viewers here today. These are free resources that are for you. So follow the QR codes as they come up, please, and register for upcoming events and opportunities with us. I agree with you. I think there is a real need to do that, and I think one of the, it gives me quite a lot of hope actually, looking at some of these events. Or if you look at the number of people that joined and registered for this event, for example, there's quite a lot of senior leaders in this group that are viewing this conversation, and I hope that it at least gives that spark for people to think about when they're writing, speeches. They might be doing speaking events, they might be leading group conversations in their organisation about a variety of different topics that affect their people. And here's the opportunity for us to spark the conversation, to think about human sustainability, to think about that different lens at a senior level, to think about challenging questions for different groups of people. Because the more we can raise that awareness and that understanding, the more likely we are to be able to influence that to be more than just a trending topic, but something that actually has impact overall, not just for human sustainability, but for our planet as well. And it's taking it to that bigger level that's really important to really think about how and why we have such a big role to play in organizations, because governments can't do it all for us, can they? And organizations have such a big influence on this world. I think we've got an opportunity to really be able to share. I'm sorry, there's an awful lot of things coming up in the chat at the moment. I'm just what they are. Like, yeah, I'm getting all the right things coming up. The calendar, the ebook. We've got a variety of toolkit resources here for you. But still open to any questions. We're going to close up in the next 5 minutes. Really keen to hear your thoughts. How are you implementing human sustainability? Has the conversation made you think about your wellbeing agenda and strategy? Are you considering raising these topics in leadership groups or in different conversations that are taking part in your organisation, or perhaps a champion group that you're part of or leading? Would love to hear thoughts now and afterwards. We always keep the chat and the comments going afterwards throughout because we know lots of people look at these recordings over time.
And Selena has just put something in the chat. Happy to connect with you, Selena, to help you with that challenge around getting buy-in. So I've got a couple of ideas for you if you wanted to connect on LinkedIn afterwards.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, there's a lot to do, isn't there? We're all kind of working in this space, and because we're able to be having these conversations with people who are potentially sometimes at the high end of the maturity curve on thinking about well-being and sustainability, it means we've got some experiences to share and some examples about some of the best practices that are happening right the way across this field. We've got Craig adding it in, yes, should be tied to KPIs like any of the other financial operational outputs. That's the thing, isn't it? It's about being able to raise the level of conversation about where well-being sits. And coming back to one of the previous points that Steve mentioned about sustainable performance being used hand in hand, those terms, so that people aren't always just thinking about that short-term performance focus.
Completely agree with Craig. Any other business investment you would have KPIs attached to? So why not this?
Absolutely. So in summary then, should we go around and have a bit of a summary of where our thinking's at now? Because I certainly, when we come off our calls and we're just chatting, the three of us, we tend to think about our actions at the end. And I do go away and take actions on the basis of every conversation we've had. So it's always really helpful for me to kind of look back and reflect and go, okay, so overall, what are we really saying? So Chris, Kirsten, up to you. Who wants to go first? Where do you think you're at now?
I think whilst we've identified that it is that human sustainability is the next thing coming, and I don't think it's going to be a fad. I think it is going to be a trend because, as we've said, the importance of sustainability is absolutely key for us as individuals, for organisations, for the planet. I think we can remember, whilst it may feel complex, that actually, and I think you said it earlier, Alex, that a lot of what we've done in the wellbeing world to advance wellbeing agendas, a lot of those best practices and how to approach things can also apply and translate to what we're trying to do around broadening the agenda to include human sustainability. So I think there's a lot that people, organisations, are already doing that they could probably learn from in terms of broadening that outlook.
Yeah, it doesn't need to feel like it's all starting from scratch, does it?
Mm.
Okay.
And I just think it's a really exciting time for organisations.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, we're being pushed, aren't we, with the pace of tech and AI that's allowing us to kind of say, do we do things differently? Can we share a different lens on something and think about it at an exec level as well? So there's a responsibility, isn't there, that we all have to kind of bring these conversations to the forefront wherever the opportunity lies. Chris, what are your thoughts? Where are you in reflecting?
Well, I'm just going to go a little bit off tangent, sorry, as I usually do. But parts of the world, legislation is starting to progress, and organisations have had to adapt post-legislation. I would argue, let's get ahead of the curve and start really creating the right types of organisations now before legislation comes in, because in the areas where it hasn't yet, it's coming. So and there's lots of countries that are putting in legislative legal requirements for organizations now. So I think we're on the right track. There's been some, as Kirsten said, there's been some amazing work going on, but let's continue the progression and make sure that we're in line with legislation when it comes.
Yeah, that's such a good point, to kind of be that proactive, strategic kind of focus, so that we're, as organisations, we're as ready as we can be, and that engages potentially new people into our workforce and retains people to want to stay longer as well, which are the key drivers for engagement for all organisations. Always saying to me, how do I attract and retain people? You know, that's what everyone's trying to do. Well, if people matter so much, let's be the right people. And I think my focus is very much at the moment in that space of researching what it means to be human. And if we really want human beings in our organisation, we've got to allow them to be humans on purpose. And so, you know, a lot of the work that we're doing is focusing around that and really understanding what are our differentiators from tech and AI, and making sure that we learn well how to use those tech developments, but that we also know ourselves enough to know when we are required to show up as humans and be ourselves on purpose, and do that in the right way, and protect that element of us, because we're unique and wonderful, and we have a really important role in this world to keep the planet going and keep it alive, and all the species that are supported by it. So, you know, we really have a duty and a responsibility, and I think all organisations are starting to take notice of that now. And I think just the fact that we had so many hundreds of people register for this event shows that there is large interest there globally. So please do join. I didn't put the link up on here, but please do join the next in our human series. We're running a few more of these live conversations through Bailey and French each month around what it means to be human, collective imagination, what human planet focus is going to mean. And obviously you've seen the downloads for both Kirsten and Chris that have been available in the chat. Please do have a look through all those rich resources and pieces of information that are here for you, and get in touch afterwards. We're all on LinkedIn quite a lot, I think, and we love having a chat, and we'd love to hear more from everybody that's joined us today. But we've come up to the end of our time now, which always goes super quickly. But I've absolutely loved sharing this conversation with so many people. And I'm really grateful for the amount of engagement that we've had, all the comments and questions. We'll be going through those afterwards to make sure that we've responded and engaged with everybody in case we've missed anything. But it's been a fantastic 45 minutes. Thank you so much, Kirsten and Chris. We'll have this available on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and several accounts on those, as well as on our Spotify channel if anyone wants to download it whilst they're running or walking the dog. We'd love to continue the conversation. So please do use whichever channel suits you to stay in touch. But over from us, I'll close off now and say thank you so much, Kirsten, Chris. I look forward to seeing you soon for big hugs. And all the events that are coming up. It is an exciting time, and I think, Kirsten, that's a really nice way to think about it. Actually, it is an exciting time, and that gives hope, doesn't it, for what's coming. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Bye. Thank you.